Every night, the forest calls. And every night, I run. But tonight, I won't escape. Evelyn Greer awoke, gasping for air, her heart thumping so loudly in her chest that she swore the walls of her room were shaking. The remnants of the dream clung to her like a fog, an endless twisting path beneath a silver moon. Wolves. Their eyes glowed with a hunger that wasn't just for prey. It was a hunger for her. She could still feel it. The wind. The scent of pine. The cold, wet earth beneath her feet as she ran, faster, harder. And then the claws. The snapping of teeth. A growl that vibrated deep in her bones. No. It's just a dream. Just a dream. But deep down, Evelyn knew something had changed. These weren't just nightmares. They were memories. With a quick motion, she threw the covers off and swung her legs over the side of the bed. The room was still dark, but the pale light of the moon seeped through the window, casting long shadows on the walls. A noise in the distance, a howl, ripped through the quiet of the night. Evelyn froze. It wasn't part of the dream. This was real. The howl echoed again, this time closer, raw and haunting. Her breath hitched. What is happening to me? The next morning, as she shelved books in the back of the small-town library, Evelyn's thoughts lingered on the dream. Her fingers absently traced the spines of the old dusty books, until one in particular caught her eye. A thick, leather-bound tome, nestled deep in the corner. She'd never seen it before. Ancient werewolf legends. Her pulse quickened, a strange pull drawing her to it, as though the book itself was calling to her. She pulled it out, the cover heavy in her hands, its pages thick with age. She opened it, the smell of old parchment filling her nose, and her eyes immediately fell on a strange symbol, a crescent moon surrounded by sharp, jagged lines. This isn't just a coincidence. A voice behind her broke her concentration. Excuse me, do you have any books on werewolf legends? The voice was low, deep, with a hint of something familiar. Evelyn turned, startled. Standing in the doorway was a man. Tall with dark, intense eyes that seemed to pierce right through her. His hair was dark, a little too long, and there was an air about him, something unsettling, yet magnetic. He was watching her with a strange intensity, as though he knew exactly what she had just discovered. I was just looking at this one, Evelyn said, her voice trembling slightly. But it's a rare one. Not sure if we have anything else like it. His lips quirked into a smile, but it was faint, distant. It's not just any legend, is it? Evelyn blinked, unsure how he knew exactly what she was thinking. Rowan Nightshade, he said, extending his hand. I'm looking for information on my family history. There's something you might be able to help me with. Evelyn shook his hand, her mind racing, and an inexplicable shiver ran down her spine. There was something about him. Something off. Something that resonated too deeply with the fear that had taken root in her dreams. Evelyn Greer, she said, her voice barely a whisper. He smiled again, though this time there was a glint of recognition in his eyes. You're not just reading about werewolves, are you, Evelyn? He asked, his voice softer now, more intimate. She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. Her heart pounded as she realized, this man knows more than he's letting on. And just like that, Evelyn's life as she knew it started to unravel. The wolves aren't just stories, Evelyn. They're real. And they've been waiting for you. Evelyn couldn't shake the words. Rowan's voice echoed in her mind, pulling at her every thought. Real? The idea had felt like madness when she first heard it, impossible even. But now with every step she took, every turn of her head, the world around her felt like it was closing in, revealing shadows she couldn't ignore. She couldn't stop thinking about the book, the dreams, and the chilling howls that tore through the night. Everything was changing. But why? And why her? Rowan's antique shop was dimly lit, the heavy scent of aged wood and leather mingling with something sharper, something familiar. Evelyn couldn't place it. Please, he said, motioning toward the back of the shop. Let me show you something. Evelyn's heart skipped. Her curiosity got the better of her, despite the warning bells going off in her head. She stepped inside. His shop was far more than a store. It felt like a museum of the impossible. Shelves crowded with ancient books, crystal vials filled with strange liquids, and odd trinkets that hummed with an unsettling energy. In the far corner, Evelyn spotted something that made her stop dead in her tracks, a large tarnished mirror, standing tall like a sentinel in the shadows. You're wondering if it's real, Rowan's voice cut through the tension, his eyes dark with meaning. What you've been feeling. The dreams. The wolves. He didn't need to ask. He already knew. Evelyn nodded, swallowing hard. I don't understand. How do you know? He took a step closer, his gaze never leaving hers. Your father, Theo Greer, was more than just a researcher. He was a part of something bigger. Something ancient. Evelyn's breath caught. Her father. Her father had disappeared years ago, leaving behind nothing but unanswered questions and a trail of mystery that had never quite added up. What do you mean? Rowan's voice dropped, becoming a soft whisper. Before your father vanished, he was uncovering the truth behind the werewolves. The real history. Not the tales, not the myths, the bloodlines. Evelyn's mind raced. Bloodlines. Your father was involved in a project to uncover the origins of the werewolf clans. To stop them from hiding in the shadows, forever lost to history. But the deeper he dug, the more dangerous it became. The pack, they didn't want anyone to know the truth. Her pulse quickened. What truth? He leaned in, his voice barely above a whisper. That the werewolves didn't just come from the wilderness. They come from the bloodline of a forgotten king. And that bloodline, your bloodline, holds the key to either breaking the curse or unleashing a war that will consume everything. Evelyn's head spun. King? Cursed? Bloodlines? She took a step back, her heart pounding against her chest. The air around her grew colder, the shadows deeper. She had to get out. But something inside her, some strange force, urged her to stay. She had no choice. What happened to him? She asked, her voice trembling. Rowan's eyes grew darker. He was taken. But before he disappeared, he left a message for you. A warning. He knew it was only a matter of time before they came for you too. Evelyn's eyes widened. They? Who? The pack. The ones who've been waiting for you. The tension in the air thickened. The more Rowan spoke, the more Evelyn felt the ground beneath her shift, as if the very reality she'd known was beginning to crumble. Why are you telling me all this? She whispered. What do you want from me? Rowan's gaze softened for a moment. I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to help you understand what you are. What you've inherited. And what's coming for us all. Evelyn's mind raced. A part of her wanted to run. But another part, the part that had always felt like something was missing, wanted to stay and learn more. Rowan's voice broke the silence once more. The pack is coming for you, Evelyn. And they won't stop until they have what they want. But it's not just about blood anymore. It's about something darker. Something that could tear apart the world we know. As Evelyn's mind reeled, her thoughts scattered like leaves in a storm. The truth was slipping through her fingers, and yet, for the first time in years, she felt alive. She was no longer the girl stuck in the past. She was the girl with the key to the future. The musty air in the study pressed against Evelyn as she stood frozen in the doorway. Her father's old desk sat in the corner, untouched for years, the wooden chair creaking as if it too had been waiting. She hadn't stepped foot in here since she was a child, but today felt different, charged like the air before a storm. She ran her fingers along the dusty bookshelves, the memories of her father swirling around her. His absence had always been a void, but now, something in her gut twisted. She needed to know why he left. Why he never came back. Her eyes fell on a stack of old papers in the corner. Beneath them, a worn leather-bound journal rested. It was his, Theo Greer. She recognized the faded gold writing on the cover. Evelyn's pulse quickened. She could feel the weight of it in her hands as if it carried more than just ink and paper. It carried the answers to questions she hadn't known how to ask. She opened the journal, the pages cracking with age. Her father's handwriting, neat and precise, was unmistakable, but what caught her attention first were the words scrawled at the top of the first page. The blood runs deep. The curse is older than the pack. But only through the bloodline can it be undone. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat. What does that mean? She flipped through the pages, skimming over his notes, but one passage stopped her cold. The Nightshade clan, my bloodline. The truth they fear. Her stomach dropped. The name Nightshade. It was the same name Rowan had mentioned, the same name that haunted her dreams. The journal was filled with fevered writings, detailing her father's obsessive search for answers about the werewolf curse. But there, buried among the pages, was a horrifying revelation. Her great-grandfather, Theodore Nightshade, wasn't just any man. He was the alpha of the Nightshade pack, the alpha. Evelyn's heart pounded. Her blood ran cold. Her family had been part of this world of werewolves, of shifting bloodlines, and now, the truth was inescapable. The key to breaking the curse lay in her hands. Her mind spun as the realization sank in. Her father hadn't just been searching for some ancient secret. He'd been protecting her from something far darker, something that had been hunting her family for generations. The pack. The curse. Her bloodline. She kept reading, desperate for more, her eyes growing wider as the journal painted a picture she couldn't yet fully comprehend. The Nightshade clan had always believed that one day, an alpha would rise from their bloodline, but not to lead them. To destroy the curse from within. The door creaked behind her. Evelyn froze. She didn't need to look back to know who it was. The heavy, familiar presence filled the room. "Rowan," she whispered, her voice shaking. "I know what my father was hiding. I know about the Nightshade clan. I'm part of it, aren't I?" There was silence. She could feel Rowan's gaze on her, but she didn't turn around. "Not yet. You're more than just part of it," he said softly, stepping closer. "You're the only one who can end it." The words hung in the air like a storm cloud, and for the first time, Evelyn felt the weight of her family's legacy. She wasn't just some librarian anymore. She wasn't just a girl with strange dreams and unanswered questions. She was the key. And the pack was coming for her. It wasn't the moon that called to her. It was something far older. And it was time to answer. The moment Evelyn stepped outside, the world felt wrong. The air was thicker now, charged with an energy that hummed against her skin. The forest beckoned, demanded her presence, the rustling leaves whispering her name. She could feel it, the force building inside her, like a storm brewing just beneath the surface. No. This isn't happening. It can't be happening. But her heart beat too fast, too violently, as if something was breaking free inside her. Her hands trembled, her chest constricted, and then it happened. A burning sensation shot through her spine, her limbs stretching, bending in ways they shouldn't. She gasped, but the air felt heavy, thick in her lungs. She tried to scream, but the sound that came out wasn't her own. It was guttural, primal, filled with the raw intensity of something ancient. Her body was no longer hers. Her skin shuddered, pulling at the seams of her human form, as if the very fabric of her being was splitting apart. Evelyn collapsed to the ground, her bones cracking and reforming in agony. The world around her shifted, the colors blurring as she lost herself in the transformation. "I can't." But it was too late. Her senses exploded. The night air no longer felt cold, but alive, tingling against her fur. She could hear everything. The soft rustle of branches, the pulse of a distant heartbeat, the hum of the forest itself. Her nose flared, inhaling the rich scent of the earth, of pine and damp leaves and something else. Something wild. She stumbled, trying to regain her footing, but her legs were too long, her body too heavy. Panic surged in her chest, and for a moment, she forgot everything she had learned. She was no longer Evelyn. She was something else. A growl tore from her throat. "Evelyn." Rowan's voice cut through the fog in her mind. She tried to focus, to ground herself, but the beast within her fought to take control. He was there, just out of reach, but it felt like he was 1,000 miles away. "Focus." Rowan shouted, his voice tense and sharp. "You have to control it. You are in control." But how could she be? The power, the hunger that burned through her was far stronger than anything she had ever felt. Every instinct screamed at her to give in, to let the wolf take over. To let the alpha rule. She shook her head, trying to clear the fog, but the wolf's instincts clung to her, urging her forward. The ground beneath her felt so small, too fragile for the power coursing through her body. She opened her mouth, trying to form words, but only a sharp bark escaped. "Evelyn, look at me." Rowan's voice was closer now, desperate. He was there, right beside her, his own shifting form more contained than hers. She could see the struggle in his eyes as his own beast lurked just beneath the surface, threatening to break free. He reached out to her, but his hand hesitated, as if afraid of what would happen if he touched her. "I can't control it," she whispered, her voice trembling with frustration and fear. "I can't." "You have to," he urged, his voice tight. "This is your birthright. You can do this." But the shift was no longer about control. It was about survival. About embracing the power that surged inside her. The beast was her inheritance. It was in her blood. And whether she liked it or not, she couldn't outrun it anymore. Rowan stepped closer, his eyes meeting hers, those deep, impossibly old eyes, and in that moment, Evelyn felt it. The connection. The bond between them. It was there, undeniable, like an unspoken promise that ran deeper than the blood in her veins. With a sharp breath, she closed her eyes and reached deep within, pulling every ounce of will she had left. She focused on the strength within her, on her father's journal, on the pack, on the legacy that was hers to claim. A quiet stillness settled over her as the transformation began to slow. She could feel the wolf inside, thrumming with power, but she was still there. She was still Evelyn. She opened her eyes again, the world clearer now. Rowan stood before her, watching her with a mixture of awe and relief. "You did it," he said, his voice barely a whisper. Evelyn's lips curled into a shaky smile, though she could feel her wolf side still lurking beneath the surface, restless. "I think I did. But I don't know how long I can keep it together." Rowan's gaze softened. "You're stronger than you realize." But Evelyn wasn't sure. She wasn't sure of anything anymore. All she knew was that the wolf was inside her, waiting. And the world was never going to be the same again. The shadow isn't just a curse. It's a hunger. And it's been waiting for you, Evelyn. Evelyn could feel the weight of the words settle over her like a shroud, the air around her thickening with a presence she couldn't see but could feel clawing at her very soul. The shadow. The thing that had haunted her bloodline for centuries, a darkness she had no choice but to face. Rowan stood across from her, his eyes burning with an intensity she couldn't quite understand. His posture was rigid, as though he too could feel the unseen force closing in on them. "You're not just dealing with a curse," he said, his voice low, almost haunted. "You're dealing with a being that feeds on fear, on hatred. It grows stronger with every shift, every time one of us embraces what we are." Evelyn felt a cold shiver run down her spine. Her heart was hammering in her chest, and the strange, almost invisible weight of the wolf inside her stirred once again. But this time, it wasn't the thrill of power that overtook her, it was a gnawing dread. A fear of what she might become. "What do you mean, feeds on fear?" she asked, her voice trembling despite her best efforts to remain calm. "How can something like that even exist?" Rowan looked away, as if he couldn't bear to meet her gaze any longer. "It's ancient. Older than any of us. It was born from the darkness that once consumed the first alpha, the hatred, the bloodshed. The shadow has always been here, lurking in the deepest corners of our world, growing stronger with each generation of the alpha bloodline." Evelyn's mind spun. She had always known that the werewolf curse was a thing of legend, but this was something else. Something that couldn't be explained away by myths or old wives' tales. It was real. And it was tied to her. "The shadow is the source of the curse?" she whispered, almost afraid to ask, as if saying it aloud might make it more real. Rowan nodded, his voice quiet. "Yes. And it has been hunting your bloodline for centuries. Every time one of us shifts, it becomes stronger. It feeds off the chaos, the violence, the fear that comes with it." A sickening thought twisted in her gut. "And what happens if it gets what it wants?" "The alpha bloodline will be consumed," Rowan said, his words hanging heavy in the air. "It will take over, completely. The shadow will become unstoppable. And it will destroy everything." Evelyn couldn't breathe. The weight of what he was saying hit her like a punch to the stomach. The pack. Her family. She was the key. The curse, the shadow, it all came back to her. "And the only way to stop it," she said, her voice barely a whisper, "is to sacrifice the alpha bloodline?" Rowan's expression was grim. "Yes. The only way to break the curse, to end the shadow's reign, is for the alpha bloodline to willingly give itself up. It's the price of peace. The price of survival." Evelyn's mind raced. Sacrifice. The word echoed in her head, each beat of her heart adding weight to the inevitability of it all. She was the bloodline. She was the one who could end it. But at what cost? Her hand trembled as she reached for the ancient journal, her father's handwriting still fresh in her memory. His obsession, his warnings. It all led back to this. Evelyn closed her eyes, the realization settling deep within her. There's no other way, is there? It has to be the alpha. It has to be me. Rowan's silence was enough of an answer. He didn't have to say it aloud. She already knew. The wind howled outside the cabin, its voice like the whisper of something ancient and terrible, a reminder that time was running out. The shadow was waiting. And Evelyn had no choice but to face it. Her fingers clenched around the journal, the words within a cruel reminder of the legacy she had inherited, and the terrible choice that lay before her. She was the alpha. But the price for breaking the curse was her life. And as the shadows crept closer, Evelyn knew she couldn't escape her fate. Evelyn's mind felt like a shattered mirror. Every piece of memory, every glimpse of her past, was now distorted, cracked, slipping through her fingers like sand, and it wasn't her fault. It couldn't be. She had always trusted her memories, her father, her childhood, Rowan. But now, with each passing day, each passing hour, those memories felt less and less like her own. They felt wrong. It started small, little things she could brush off. A word Rowan had said to her that didn't sound quite right. A face in a crowd she thought she recognized but couldn't place. But then it grew. Evelyn stood in the woods, the scent of pine and damp earth heavy in the air. She was alone, but she could have sworn she wasn't. A shadow moved at the edge of her vision, something dark and lurking, like a presence waiting just out of reach. She whipped around, but there was nothing there. Nothing visible. But her mind was already swirling. Was it real? Was it the shadow? The voice came first, quiet at first, then louder. It's not him. Rowan's face, just days ago so full of warmth and mystery, now felt cold. Distant. What if he's been lying to you the whole time? What if he's the one who's been leading you into danger? Evelyn's heart thudded against her chest. She stumbled back, trying to steady herself, but everything around her blurred. Her breath caught as the trees seemed to close in, the shadows growing longer, darker. No. Don't listen to it. Don't listen to it. But it was too late. The seed had been planted. The next few days felt like a fog. Her thoughts swirled around Rowan, around the truth he had shared, forced upon her. Had she been wrong to trust him? Had he really been the one trying to protect her, or was he manipulating her like everyone else in her life had done? Her father's journal, the one that had started this entire journey, sat untouched on her desk. She reached for it, but hesitated. The ink on the pages seemed so distant. Was that really her father's handwriting? As she flipped through the pages, one particular passage caught her eye, one she hadn't seen before. She read it aloud under her breath, her voice shaking. The Alpha's bloodline is cursed. The key to the curse is within the memories, but they will always be twisted. The truth will never be what you remember. It's the shadow's way. Evelyn's head swam. The shadow, it could alter memories. It could erase pieces of the past and make her question what was real. By the time Rowan found her again, she was already lost. She had heard the words in her head. Don't trust him. Her eyes narrowed as she looked at him, his figure framed by the dim light of the cabin door. What did you do to me? She demanded, her voice trembling with doubt. Rowan's face softened, and for a moment, she almost believed him. Evelyn, you have to believe me. I would never hurt you. The shadow is. No. She took a step back, panic rising in her chest. You've been controlling me. You've been feeding me lies. He reached for her, but Evelyn pulled away, her mind spinning. The memories were all blurred now, like a photograph smeared with water. Nothing made sense anymore. Who could she trust? What could she trust? The shadow had already taken root in her thoughts, whispering doubt into every corner of her mind. Evelyn, please, Rowan's voice broke through the storm in her head. It's not what you think. The shadow is using you, twisting your memories. I'm trying to protect you. Evelyn closed her eyes. She couldn't hear him anymore. The voice was too loud now, the voice that told her the truth was a lie. He was the one who led you here. He's part of the curse. He's part of the shadow. I can't trust you, she whispered, her voice breaking as the truth she'd clung to shattered into 1,000 pieces. Rowan's face fell, his eyes dark with regret, but Evelyn was too far gone. She had to get away. As she turned to run, the forest around her seemed to grow darker, suffocating her in shadows. The ground beneath her feet seemed to shift, as if the very earth was trying to swallow her whole. She couldn't remember what was real anymore. Was Rowan the man she thought he was? Or had the shadow already taken him too? Evelyn's heart pounded as she stood in the shadow of the trees, her breath coming in shallow gasps. The moon hung high above, its pale light filtering through the branches, casting long eerie shadows across the ground. But it wasn't the darkness of the night that filled her with dread. It was the silence. The kind of silence that felt like the world was holding its breath, waiting for something terrible to happen. Something was wrong. She could feel it in the air, thick and suffocating. But there was no time to question it. As she stepped further into the clearing, the hairs on the back of her neck stood up. Someone was watching her. She could feel their eyes on her, cold and calculating. Then she heard the voice, low and filled with venom. "You're too late, Evelyn." Leo. Her chest tightened as she spun to face him. His silhouette emerged from the shadows, his eyes gleaming with a predatory gleam that sent a chill down her spine. "You," she whispered, disbelief flooding her voice. "What are you doing here?" Leo took a slow step forward, a smirk playing at the corners of his lips. His stance was relaxed, but Evelyn could see the tension in his muscles, the way his body coiled like a spring ready to snap. "I was wondering when you'd figure it out," he said, his voice dripping with malice. "You really think you're the one who's going to stop this? That you're the key to ending it all? You don't even know the truth." Her pulse quickened. The truth? She didn't know what was happening, but she felt it, the darkness closing in. The betrayal she sensed was becoming all too real. "You've been working with the shadow, haven't you?" Evelyn demanded, her voice trembling with anger. "All this time, you've been using me." Leo's smile widened. "Using you?" He let out a low chuckle. "No, Evelyn. I'm not using you. I'm setting you free. You see, the shadow doesn't need to be destroyed. It needs to be embraced. And you are the perfect vessel to make that happen." Evelyn recoiled as though he had struck her. "No. This can't be true." Leo, her friend, had been working for the very thing she was fighting against. He had been the one feeding her lies, manipulating her into believing the curse could be broken. "Why?" she whispered, struggling to comprehend the depth of his betrayal. "Why would you do this?" "Because," Leo said, stepping closer, his voice cold and calculating, "the shadow is power. Pure, untamable power. And you, Evelyn, are the key to unlocking it. Your bloodline, the alpha bloodline, is the final piece. With you, the shadow will rise, stronger than ever." Her stomach churned. The truth hit her like a punch to the gut. The Packer family, they had been pawns in a game much bigger than they could have ever imagined. "Your father," Leo continued, his eyes narrowing, "wasn't just searching for a cure, Evelyn. He was hiding something from you. The power to destroy the shadow wasn't just in the bloodline. It was in him. Your father, Theo Greer, was the one who could have ended it. But he didn't want to destroy the shadow. He wanted to control it." Evelyn's knees buckled, and she gripped the nearest tree for support. Her mind reeled. Her father, the man she had trusted, the man she had been trying to understand, had been hiding the truth from her all along. He hadn't been protecting her. He had been guarding a secret so dark, so dangerous, that it could destroy everything. Leo took another step toward her, his eyes never leaving hers. "You were always meant to be part of this. The shadow is in your blood, Evelyn. You've been running from it, but it's always been inside you." "No," Evelyn said, shaking her head, her voice breaking. "No, I can't." "Yes, you can." Leo's voice was low, almost coaxing. "You're already becoming it. The alpha. The true alpha." Suddenly, the world around her spun. The ground beneath her feet seemed to shift, the shadows stretching longer, darker. The shadow was no longer a distant threat. It was here in the forest, in the very air she breathed. She could feel it, feeding off her fear, feeding off the doubt Leo had planted in her heart. Rowan's face flashed in her mind, his words echoing in her ears. "Evelyn, you have to fight it." But Evelyn wasn't sure if she could fight it anymore. Leo was right. The shadow had been inside her from the beginning. It had been waiting for the moment when she would finally accept it. And now, that moment was here. Evelyn stood in the moonlit clearing, her heart hammering in her chest, the weight of Rowan's words pressing down on her like a physical force. She could feel the presence of the shadow. T was inside her, clawing at the edges of her mind, waiting for her to falter. But the ritual that could end it all, could wipe the curse from the Alpha bloodline forever, came with a price she wasn't ready to pay. Rowan's voice broke through the swirling chaos of her thoughts. There's only one way to stop it, Evelyn. The shadow has to be destroyed from within. And that means you. She turned to him, her hands shaking. Me? You want me to destroy it? He nodded, the shadows in his eyes darkening. Yes. There's an ancient ritual, one that's been passed down through the bloodlines for centuries. It's the only way. But it requires a sacrifice. A sharp breath caught in her throat. A sacrifice? She repeated, her voice trembling. What kind of sacrifice? Rowan didn't speak right away. He stepped closer, the weight of the moment settling between them like an invisible wall. The ritual requires the blood of a true alpha, one willing to sacrifice themselves to destroy the shadow. The ritual calls for the alpha's life. Evelyn's heart stopped. She couldn't breathe. Her life? You mean, I have to die? Rowan's eyes were filled with an unreadable emotion, regret, fear, something darker. No, not you. Me. She stared at him, her mind struggling to process the enormity of his words. You? Her voice faltered. You would sacrifice yourself? I have to, Rowan whispered. The shadow is part of me. I've been fighting it my whole life. But I can't keep running from it. The curse is my burden too. Her mind reeled. The man who had been her guide, her only true ally in this twisted world, was offering himself up to end it all. He was willing to die to sacrifice himself for her. For them. No, Evelyn breathed, stepping back. I can't let you do that. You can't just die for me. It's the only way, Rowan said, his voice firm, unshakable. The shadow will never stop, Evelyn. Not until it has consumed everything. We are the key to ending it, but only one of us can live through this. Her thoughts were a blur. 1,000 images flashed through her mind, her father's journal, the pack, the cursed bloodline, and in the center of it all was Rowan, his unwavering loyalty, his quiet strength. He had been her only anchor in this storm, and now he was asking her to choose, to kill him in order to save everything she loved, or risk the shadow devouring them all. I can't lose him, she thought, but the guilt gnawed at her. Isn't this my burden? Isn't this my fate to bear? What happens if I don't do this? Evelyn asked, her voice barely more than a whisper, her fear clawing its way to the surface. Rowan didn't hesitate. The shadow will take over. It will consume both of us. The alpha bloodline will die with us, along with everyone in its path. A long, painful silence stretched between them. The forest around them seemed to hold its breath, the air heavy with the weight of the decision that lay before her. Evelyn's chest ached as she struggled to hold back the tears. This was impossible. How could she choose between saving the world and the one person who had stood by her through every moment of fear and doubt? You don't have to do this, she whispered. I'll find another way. I'll figure it out. But Rowan's expression softened. There is no other way, Evelyn. The curse has been here too long. The shadow has too much power. You are the key. The Alpha's bloodline has been marked for this moment. Evelyn's mind raced. Everything was spinning. She wanted to scream, to break free of this nightmare. She couldn't make this decision. She couldn't be the one to end it all. This wasn't fair. But the truth loomed large, undeniable. Her bloodline, her fate, had always been leading to this. The curse had always been within her. And the only way to end it was to break the chain, by sacrificing what mattered most. Her eyes locked with Rowan's. She saw the truth in his eyes, the quiet acceptance of the man who had already made peace with his fate. He wasn't asking her to save him. He was asking her to save everything else. And then, the weight of it all hit her like a tidal wave. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for them all. Evelyn's voice cracked as she spoke. I can't do it. I can't kill you. Rowan stepped closer, reaching out for her hand. You don't have to, Evelyn. You don't have to make this choice alone. I'm not asking for this sacrifice to be mine. I'm asking you to make the choice. And I'll stand with you, whatever you decide. The forest seemed to close in around them as Evelyn's heart raced. Her mind spun with the weight of what Rowan had offered. She had always known the choice would come, but she hadn't known it would be this hard. The moon hung low, a pale witness to the nightmare that was unfolding in the forest. Evelyn's breath came in frantic gasps as she sprinted, her legs aching, the ground beneath her feet a blur of mud and roots. Rowan was ahead, his figure a shadow against the silver light, pushing her forward, but Evelyn could feel the darkness closing in on them. The shadow was hunting them. And so was Leo. The trees seemed to stretch taller, their twisted branches reaching out like skeletal hands, pulling her deeper into the heart of the forest. Every step she took felt heavier, as if the forest itself was alive, fighting her, pulling her towards something she didn't want to find. Her heart raced, not from exhaustion, but from something darker. The shadow. She could feel it in her bones. The pull. The whisper. The hunger. It was inside her now, gnawing at the edges of her mind. She could hear the whispers of the shadow, its dark voice wrapping around her thoughts, coaxing her, urging her to let go, to embrace the power that was growing inside her. "You can't outrun it, Evelyn," the voice hissed. "You'll never outrun it." The fear, the doubt, the darkness, it all felt so familiar. Too familiar. She staggered for a moment, a sudden wave of dizziness hitting her as the forest around her began to spin. Her vision blurred. The shadows seemed to stretch, distorting the trees, twisting them into monstrous shapes. She stumbled again, her hands shooting out to catch herself. The ground beneath her felt wrong, as though it were shifting, alive with an energy she couldn't control. "Evelyn, keep moving." Rowan's voice sliced through the fog in her mind. He was ahead of her now, his face a mask of desperation. His eyes filled with fear met hers. "Don't stop. We can't let it catch us." But how could she not stop? She could feel the change. Feel the wolf inside her, pushing harder, demanding to be released. She could feel her skin burning with the transformation, her senses heightening, the world around her becoming sharper, more vivid. Every snap of a twig, every rustle of leaves, felt like an explosion in her mind. The hunger clawed at her, urging her to give in. To shift completely. She swallowed hard, pushing back the panic rising in her chest. Not yet. She couldn't let herself become the monster she was trying to outrun. Suddenly, the woods erupted with movement. Figures emerged from the shadows, Leo and the pack. Their eyes gleamed in the moonlight, filled with malice. They were everywhere. "We have nowhere to run," Evelyn gasped, her voice breaking. The pack was closing in, their figures blurred and swift, like shadows chasing the light. Rowan's eyes locked onto hers, his voice low and urgent. "You have to shift, Evelyn. Now." Her blood ran cold. She didn't want to do it. Not like this. But as Leo's voice rang out, dark and commanding, the decision was made for her. "Let's finish this," Leo said, his eyes wild with a dangerous gleam. "She's ours now." Evelyn felt her skin burn again, the change inevitable. She could feel the power building inside her, the wolf clawing to escape, to tear through the cage of her human form. But it wasn't just the wolf. It was the shadow. The shadow was inside her now. It was feeding off her fear, her doubt. It wanted her to shift. It wanted to take control. "Evelyn," Rowan's voice broke through her spiraling thoughts, full of desperation. "Don't let it win. You are in control." But as she glanced at him, her vision shifted, blurred and twisted. For a split second, it wasn't Rowan standing there anymore. The face before her grinned, eyes glowing with a sick, twisted light. A snarl curled on his lips. "No," she whispered. It wasn't Rowan. It was the shadow, manifested in him, in everyone. For one terrifying moment, Evelyn forgot who she was. She forgot what she was fighting for. The darkness within her surged forward, clawing to take over. With a scream, Evelyn fell to her knees, clutching her head as the transformation tore through her. She could feel her bones shifting, her skin ripping, her mind splitting in two. The wolf's instinct screamed at her to run, to fight, to destroy. And for a brief moment, Evelyn wondered if she ever truly had a choice. Rowan's voice, raw with fear, sliced through the chaos. "Evelyn, you are stronger than this." The words cut through the fog in her mind. She had a choice. She could control it. She had to. With a violent shake of her head, Evelyn screamed, fighting the change. She wasn't the shadow's puppet. She wasn't anyone's weapon. And she wasn't about to let the shadow win. The moment Evelyn stepped inside the fortress, the air shifted, cold, ancient, alive. The walls groaned as if the very stone had been waiting for them, whispering secrets to the wind, pulling them deeper into its heart. The fortress, hidden from the world for centuries, was no longer just a place. It was a warning, a tomb, a prison, and it was alive with something far darker than they could have imagined. The door creaked open with a groan of rusted hinges, its ancient wood trembling beneath Evelyn's touch. Rowan stepped in first, his silhouette barely visible in the dim light of the crumbling hallway. The air felt thick here, as though every breath was a struggle. Evelyn followed, her pulse quickening, the weight of what lay ahead heavy on her chest. This place wasn't just her great-grandfather's legacy. It was the heart of the curse, the place where the ritual would either save them all, or destroy them. "This is it," Rowan whispered, his voice reverberating off the stone walls. "The artifacts we need should be in the chamber ahead." But Evelyn didn't hear him. Her mind was already spiraling, her thoughts tangled with fear and doubt. This fortress had been hidden for a reason. It wasn't just a tomb for forgotten secrets. It was a prison for something darker. And she could feel it, crawling beneath her skin, pushing against her consciousness. The shadow. "Stay close," Rowan warned, his voice suddenly tense. He stopped, staring at the far wall where a dark shape flickered, barely noticeable. A shadow. Moving against the light. Evelyn froze. The air grew colder, the walls closing in around them. She felt it then, a pulse of dark energy vibrating in the very air they breathed. The shadow had followed them. It was here. The temperature dropped again, and for a heartbeat, everything around them seemed to distort. The stone walls seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting like the lungs of a beast. Time felt wrong. She blinked, and the hallway ahead of her twisted, as if it had stretched farther than it should have. "This place, it's shifting," Evelyn whispered, her voice shaking. "It's not real." "It's the shadow," Rowan said, his face pale. "It's eroding reality. This fortress was built to keep the shadow contained. But it's weakening." Evelyn's breath caught in her throat as she looked around. The shadows on the walls weren't shadows anymore. They were alive, moving, growing, filling the space with darkness. The air buzzed with an oppressive force, like the world itself was about to tear apart. "No," she whispered, taking a step back. "It's not real. It can't be real." Rowan grabbed her arm, his grip tight. "Focus, Evelyn. Don't let it pull you in. The shadow wants you to doubt what's real." But it was already too late. The walls shuddered again, this time violently. The ground beneath their feet shifted, crumbling like dust. Evelyn reached out, barely catching herself as the stone floor buckled beneath her. And then she saw it. At the end of the hall, a doorway appeared where none had been before. It wasn't just a door. It was a portal, its edges swirling with dark energy, distorted and chaotic. Time rippled around it, bending and twisting as though it didn't belong. "No," Rowan breathed. "It's real. The shadow has opened it." The air thickened, and Evelyn could feel it now, the call of the portal, the pull of the darkness at the edges of her mind. She stepped forward, each movement sluggish, like wading through molasses. The walls closed in even tighter, the shadows thickening around her. They weren't just watching. They were waiting. "This is it, isn't it?" she said, her voice barely audible, the weight of inevitability sinking in. "This is the end." Rowan turned to her, his face hard, but there was fear in his eyes. "No, Evelyn. It's the beginning. We're so close. We just need to get through." But the ground beneath them cracked wide open, the stone splitting like an earthquake. The portal pulsed, drawing them closer, the darkness becoming tangible, suffocating. Evelyn reached for Rowan, her fingers brushing his, but it was too late. The portal's pull was stronger than anything they had ever felt. And as she looked at the swirling blackness, she realized they weren't just fighting to survive anymore. They were fighting for their very existence. And the shadow? It was just getting started. Evelyn's fingers trembled as she brushed aside the ancient parchment, her eyes falling on the words written in her great-grandfather's hand. The journal she held felt heavier than it ever had before, as though it contained not just the past, but the very weight of her bloodline's secrets. Secrets that could shatter everything she thought she knew about herself. About her father. About the curse that had haunted them all. The truth was right in front of her, but it wasn't what she had expected. It was worse. So much worse. Her great-grandfather, Theodore Nightshade, the original Alpha, had made a deal. Not to destroy the shadow but to contain it. The cold realization hit her like a punch to the gut. The Alpha bloodline wasn't the solution to ending the curse, it was the prison. Theodore had sealed the shadow's power within the pack's bloodline, locking it away from the world, but at a cost. The price of power had always been sacrifice. Her family wasn't the key to breaking the curse. They had been the key to keeping it alive. Evelyn's heart raced as she read the words over and over again, as if hoping they would change, as if hoping this was just a mistake. But it wasn't. The shadow had never been an enemy to be defeated. It had been an ally, a force her great-grandfather had bargained with, forged in blood. It was a pact sealed in darkness, with promises of power and survival for the pack. But that power, contained within the Alpha bloodline, had come with a terrible price. The curse wasn't meant to be broken. It was meant to be managed. She turned to Rowan, her mind reeling, the truth dawning on her like a storm cloud that refused to pass. "You were right," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It wasn't about destroying the shadow. It was about controlling it. My great-grandfather, he sold us all out, didn't he?" Rowan's face was grim as he stepped closer, his eyes haunted. He did what he thought was best. He believed the pack's survival depended on the shadow's containment. But that deal came with a price. A price you're now paying. Evelyn swallowed hard, the weight of her family's actions sinking in. Her bloodline wasn't cursed. They were prisoners. The shadow had been their captive, chained by a pact made in desperation. And now, that same darkness was stirring inside her, clawing its way to the surface. "You're telling me," Evelyn's voice broke as the truth hit her full force, "that all this time, the Alpha bloodline wasn't cursed by the shadow? We weren't chosen to end it. We were chosen to keep it alive." "Yes," Rowan said, his voice heavy with regret. "Your family didn't break the curse, they became its wardens. The shadow's power was never meant to be destroyed. It was meant to be contained, but it's breaking free now." Evelyn could feel it, deep inside her, the shadow was awake. It was pushing against her every thought, every memory. The force of it was too powerful, too ancient. She could hear its whispers now, louder than ever, urging her to embrace it. To let go. "I don't want to be part of this anymore," Evelyn whispered, her chest tight, her mind racing. "I don't want to carry this burden." "You don't have a choice," Rowan said softly, his voice filled with sorrow. "You're the last link. The shadow has already claimed your bloodline. It won't stop until it's consumed you. It wants you, Evelyn. And it will stop at nothing to take you completely." The words struck her like a thunderclap. "It wants me." She was the final piece of the pact, the key to everything. And the shadow wasn't just after the pack. It was after her. As the realization hit her, Evelyn's knees buckled, and she collapsed onto the floor, the journal still clutched in her trembling hands. This wasn't just a curse. It was a trap. Her great-grandfather had never intended to end the shadow. He had sold his soul, and the souls of his descendants, to keep it at bay. The price of their survival had been the slow erosion of their very identity. And now, it was her turn. The last Alpha bloodline. The last key to holding the shadow back. But at what cost? Evelyn stood in the heart of the ruined temple, the air thick with the scent of damp stone and the bitter tang of power. The ancient walls seemed to pulse, their surface alive with the remnants of the curse, as if the very stones were whispering the secrets of the pack. She could feel it in her bones. This was the final moment, the point where everything would either break or be forever consumed. Leo stepped into the center of the chamber, his figure silhouetted by the dim, flickering light of the torches. He was calm, too calm, as if the weight of what was about to unfold didn't matter to him. But it was his eyes, cold, calculating, that struck fear into her heart. "This is it, Evelyn," Leo said, his voice smooth, like venom. "This is where it all ends. Where it begins." She could hear the wicked promise in his words, feel the darkness gathering around him. He stepped closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "I don't need the pack, Evelyn. I don't need anyone. What I need is you, the last of the Alpha bloodline. With your blood, with your sacrifice, I will become the true Alpha. I will be the vessel for the shadow, and I will break the curse." Evelyn's stomach twisted in horror as the truth hit her. Leo wasn't the enemy she thought he was. He was far worse. He had been playing a game with her from the very beginning. He wasn't trying to kill the shadow. He was inviting it in. "You've been working with the shadow this whole time," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, disbelief flooding her chest. "You want to become it." Leo's lips curled into a smile, too perfect, too cold. "Exactly. I was always meant to be the one to lead it, to control it. The pack doesn't understand what it could become, what it should become. But you, Evelyn, I can use." Evelyn's body tensed. The weight of her decisions crashed down on her, and for a fleeting moment, everything paused. She wasn't just standing in this ancient place, she was standing at the edge of the abyss. Everything had led to this moment. The pack. The shadow. Her bloodline. The choice was no longer just hers to make. It was the world's. She glanced at Rowan, standing by her side, his expression a mask of resignation. "Evelyn, don't listen to him. He's already given himself to the shadow. You're the only one who can stop this. You're the last hope." But Leo's laughter echoed in the cavernous room, a dark sound that sent chills through her. "Stop it? Oh, how naive. It's already too late. The shadow is inside you. You are the curse now, Evelyn. You've been chosen. And you'll serve it, whether you like it or not." Evelyn's mind reeled. She was the last alpha, the last piece of the puzzle. Leo wanted her blood to fuel the shadow, to transform it into something even more powerful, something unstoppable. And in that moment, Evelyn realized the terrible truth: the curse could never be broken by force. It had to be broken by sacrifice. She clenched her fists, feeling the wolf inside her stir. The pull was growing stronger now, her shifting abilities clawing to the surface. Her breath became ragged as the fight between the alpha within her and the shadow became physical, like a battle for control of her own soul. "You don't have to do this," she whispered, her eyes locked on Leo's, searching for any trace of the man she thought she knew. "You can still stop. There's another way." He shook his head, his eyes darkening. "There is no other way, Evelyn. You'll see. When the shadow takes over, you'll understand. You'll embrace it. And when you do, you'll kneel before me." The room shifted. Reality itself seemed to bend, and Evelyn could feel the shadow's presence closing in. It was alive. It was watching her, waiting for her to make the choice that would change everything. For a moment, Evelyn thought of her father. Of the journal. The warning he had left behind. The bloodline wasn't meant to break the curse, it was meant to contain it. But now, the curse had broken free. The shadow was rising. And Evelyn was the key. She had one choice left: sacrifice herself, end the curse, and free the world from the shadow's grip. Or embrace the beast inside her, let it consume her, and let Leo and the shadow take everything. Evelyn turned her eyes to Rowan, who was watching her with a mixture of fear and hope. He didn't have to say anything. She already knew. He would stand by her, no matter what. She had to fight. She had to win. But at what cost? The room seemed to tighten as Evelyn raised her head, locking eyes with Leo for the last time. "I won't be your vessel." With that, she shifted. Her bones cracked,
This is
her
it,
muscles
Evelyn.
ripped,
This is where
her
it all
body burning
ends.
as the alpha within her
Where
rose,
it begins.
faster, fiercer than ever before. She could feel Leo's laughter fading behind her, but the battle had only just begun. The world around Evelyn exploded in chaos. Her body twisted with the agony of the transformation, her senses overwhelmed by the force of the alpha blood that surged through her veins. The shadow was pushing against her, clawing at her mind, urging her to give in, to embrace it. But as the shadows closed in, something inside her clicked. A memory, a realization, whispered through the fog of her thoughts. "The shadow has never wanted to destroy you." The thought hit her like a cold wave, and for a moment, everything froze. The howl of the wind outside the temple, the whispers of the pack closing in, it all faded into the background as the truth slammed into her consciousness. The shadow didn't want to annihilate her bloodline. It wanted to merge with it. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat as the weight of the revelation sank in. The shadow had been toying with her, manipulating her, feeding off her every fear, every doubt, every moment of weakness. But it wasn't trying to consume her. It was trying to awaken the full potential of her alpha power. The shadow didn't want destruction. It wanted ascension. Her thoughts reeled, her mind clashing with the new understanding. All this time, she had been fighting the wrong battle. The curse, the transformation, the whispers in the dark, they weren't about breaking free. They were about embracing it. Embrace it. But the power it offered, the pull it exerted on her, was intoxicating. She could feel it now, the deep primal force coiling within her, like a dormant beast that had finally awakened. Every bone in her body burned with it, every instinct screamed for release. The shadow had been waiting for this moment. It had been searching for the right alpha, someone with a bloodline strong enough to contain its power, someone willing to embrace it, not fight it. You have to control it, Evelyn. Rowan's voice sliced through the fog of her thoughts, urgent, filled with desperation. He was beside her, his hand outstretched. This is your moment. You can't let it control you. You have to control it. But how could she? How could she trust herself when the very nature of her bloodline had been forged by the shadow? Every part of her screamed for release, for the wolf to rise up and take what was rightfully hers. Her vision blurred, her senses spinning out of control as the shadow's presence grew stronger. It was in every shadow, every breath she took. But something shifted inside her. She could feel it, the alpha inside her was waking up. Not just the wolf, but the true power of her bloodline. The power that had always been meant to be her own. In the distance, Leo's voice rang out, mocking her. It's too late, Evelyn. You can't fight it. You are it. He was wrong. He didn't understand. She wasn't the enemy. The shadow wasn't the enemy. The real enemy was the fear that she wasn't strong enough to control it, that she would lose herself to the power that was rising inside her. With a guttural roar, Evelyn's body exploded with power. Her muscles rippled, her senses sharpened to an unbearable degree, and the world around her twisted once more. But this time, she wasn't fighting it. She was riding it. She closed her eyes, focusing on the surge of power that flooded her, willing it to bend to her will. She wasn't going to let the shadow consume her. She wasn't going to let it control her. She was the alpha. She had always been. A sharp, brutal snap echoed in her mind, and Evelyn opened her eyes. Everything around her was clearer, sharper, alive. The shadow was still there, coiled within her, but now, it was hers to command. The power, the transformation, it was hers to control. For the first time, Evelyn knew what it meant to be truly free. But with the power came a terrifying truth. She wasn't just the alpha anymore. She was something more. The shadow wasn't a curse. It was a part of her bloodline, a part of her destiny. And now, the real battle began. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat as she stood before the shadow, now fully awake and thrumming with power. It pulsed in the air around her, a living, breathing force, its presence so thick she could taste it on her tongue. The very ground beneath her feet seemed to shudder with the weight of it, as though the earth itself was trembling in fear. But this wasn't fear. This was something far darker. This was anger. This was her. The moment she embraced her alpha nature, everything changed. The world snapped into focus, clearer, sharper, as if her senses had been stretched to their limits. She could hear everything, the beating of her heart, the rustle of the wind, the pulse of life in the very ground beneath her feet. The shadow was no longer just something out there, it was inside her, a dark reflection of her own power, her own rage. She closed her eyes, and for a moment, everything went still. She felt it, the surge of power, the raw, untapped potential that had always been within her. The wolf, the alpha, had always been inside. She had just been too afraid to let it take control. But now, there was no fear. There was only power. Only the beast. Only her. You've always known, Evelyn, the shadow whispered, its voice slithering through her mind like poison. You were never meant to fight me. You were meant to become me. Her heart pounded in her chest, but this time, it wasn't fear that filled her veins, it was clarity. The shadow wasn't a separate entity. It wasn't something out there to be defeated. It was a reflection of everything she had tried to suppress, her fears, her anger, the darkness within her. The shadow had been fed by centuries of human conflict, by every battle, every betrayal, every broken promise. It had been waiting for her to realize what it was, and what it could become. Her eyes snapped open. The forest around her seemed to grow darker, the trees closing in, their twisted branches reaching for her, as if the world itself was collapsing. But Evelyn wasn't afraid. The fear was gone. She was in control now. With a deep breath, she raised her hand, her fingers crackling with raw, untamed power. The shadow recoiled, its form shifting and warping as it tried to resist her. But it couldn't. She was no longer fighting it. She was embracing it. She was becoming it. The world seemed to hold its breath as Evelyn's power surged through her, wild and untamed. The shadow screamed, a high-pitched wail that rattled her bones, but she didn't flinch. She focused. She reached deep inside herself, touching the darkness that had always been there, and for the first time, she understood. The shadow was not something to fear. It was a part of her. A part of the power she had been born with. To destroy it, she didn't have to fight it. She had to accept it. She had to destroy the darkness within herself. "You think you can control me?" The shadow hissed, its form swirling and twisting, growing more monstrous by the second. "You think you can destroy me?" Evelyn's eyes burned with fire, her heart steady, her voice calm. "I don't want to destroy you. I want to understand you." And then, with a roar that shook the very air, Evelyn released it. She unleashed the full extent of her power, a wave of energy so intense it sent shockwaves through the forest. The shadow writhed, its form flickering like a candle in the wind, but Evelyn held her ground. The darkness inside her, the shadow, was no longer her enemy. It was a part of her. And now, she was in control. The ground beneath her cracked open, the earth splitting as the shadow's final scream echoed into the night. Evelyn could feel it, the end. The battle was over. The darkness had been absorbed into her, and for the first time, she felt whole. But as the forest returned to silence, Evelyn knew the real battle had just begun. The pack stood in silence, the tension so thick it seemed to choke the very air around them. Evelyn could feel their eyes on her, heavy, expectant, full of doubt. The forest around them whispered, the wind rustling through the trees, but it felt like the world was holding its breath, waiting for the decision that would change everything. She had fought for them. She had fought for herself. And now, it was their turn to fight for her. For the future. But the shadow wasn't just an enemy anymore. It was in their blood. It was in their fear. And that was the real battle. Leo stood at the edge of the clearing, his presence cold, commanding. His eyes gleamed with an unsettling mix of hunger and confidence. He had always known that the pack's loyalty could be broken, and now with the shadow's influence over them, he was right. "The choice is simple," Leo called out, his voice smooth, almost comforting. "You all know what's at stake. The shadow is power. It's what we were meant for. It's what we've always been. Join me, and together we will rule this world, just as it was always meant to be." His gaze swept across the pack, and Evelyn saw it, doubt flickering in the eyes of the wolves closest to him. They were afraid. She knew the power of the shadow. She knew what it could do. And if they followed Leo, if they let the shadow consume them, it would be over. There would be no going back. The pack, the world, everything they had fought for would be swallowed whole. "Don't listen to him," Evelyn shouted, her voice rising, filled with raw, undeniable power. The words felt like a command, a declaration of everything she had become. "The shadow doesn't rule us. We decide what we become." The pack shifted uneasily, their eyes darting between her and Leo. There was fear, yes, but there was something else too, something deeper. The question that hung in the air was no longer just about survival. It was about trust. Did they trust her? Or did they trust the shadow? Rowan stepped forward, his voice low but steady, like the calm before a storm. "Leo's vision is not ours to share. He speaks of power, but all he offers is destruction. The shadow offers nothing but the end of who we are." Evelyn's heart thudded as she looked into Rowan's eyes. This was it. She wasn't just standing for herself anymore. She was standing for all of them, the pack she had come to protect, the people who had become her family. And she wasn't backing down. The silence stretched, thick and heavy, as the pack looked at one another, the weight of the decision sinking in. There was fear in their eyes, but there was something else too. Something Evelyn hadn't seen before. Hope. The wolves, her pack, were finally starting to see the truth. The shadow had only ever been a reflection of their own darkest fears. And the only way to defeat it was to face it head-on together. "We stand with you, Evelyn," one of the wolves, a young female named Lyra, said quietly. The others murmured in agreement, the sound growing louder as they circled around her. And in that moment, Evelyn felt it, the bond of the pack, stronger than any curse, any shadow. They were hers. She was theirs. But Leo's smile never wavered. "You think you can defeat me? You think you can defeat us?" He stepped forward, his form shifting, his eyes glowing with the deadly promise of the shadow. You're too weak to stop what's coming. I am what the world needs. The shadow is the future. His words were like a whip, lashing out with venom, but Evelyn stood firm, her power crackling in the air around her. The wolves at her back were ready. They were prepared. And in this moment, they were more than just pack, they were a force. We are the future, Evelyn said, her voice full of conviction. The future is not fear. It's trust. It's unity. It's us. The ground beneath them trembled, the shadow rising to claim its power. But this time, it wasn't the pack that trembled. It was Leo. Evelyn's heart raced as she took a step forward. She could feel the power of the pack swelling inside her, like a tidal wave ready to crash. This was the moment. This was the final choice. The battle for the pack's soul was on, and Evelyn wasn't about to let it slip away. To save the world, you must lose the one thing you love most. The world was collapsing around her. Evelyn could feel it, every breath, every heartbeat, every crack in the earth beneath her feet. The shadow raged inside her, clawing at her mind, demanding to be free. But she wasn't the monster it wanted her to be. She wasn't a vessel for its darkness. She was the alpha. But the price of that power, the price of saving everything, was too high. Rowan stood before her, his eyes dark with the weight of his decision. He didn't look like the man she knew. He didn't look like the man who had held her when she cried, who had fought by her side through every battle. No, this was a man who had already made his peace with fate. I can't control it anymore, Evelyn, he said, his voice quiet but filled with undeniable strength. You're the one who was born for this. You're the one who can break the curse. But I can't let it consume you. Evelyn's heart twisted painfully in her chest. Rowan, no. You don't have to. I do, he interrupted gently, his hand reaching out to touch her cheek, his fingers cold but tender. I do have to. If I don't help you now, if I don't do this, the shadow will take you. And I won't let it. Her pulse quickened, the truth sinking in like a dagger. Rowan. No. You can't give yourself up for me. I can't lose you. His eyes softened, filled with the kind of love and acceptance that shattered her resolve. You already have, Evelyn. But if my death means you can finally live, if it means you can control the shadow and set the pack free, then it's worth it. Evelyn's hands trembled as she reached for him, but the weight of what he was saying, what he was willing to do, crushed her. She had never imagined this would be the cost of her salvation. She had never imagined the love of her life would become the ultimate sacrifice. Rowan, please, she whispered, her voice breaking. I can't do this without you. You're the only one who understands. The only one who. You are the alpha now, he said softly, his voice steady despite the pain in his eyes. And you always will be. The world around them seemed to hold its breath, the air thick with the inevitability of the moment. Rowan took a deep breath, his hands closing around hers, his grip firm despite the chaos swirling inside them. I love you, Evelyn, he whispered, as if he was sealing his fate with those 3 words. And I'll always be with you. In your heart. In your soul. Before Evelyn could speak, before she could beg him to reconsider, the ground beneath them trembled. The shadow had sensed the shift. It was rising, drawn to the sacrifice, to the power of Evelyn's alpha bloodline. But it wasn't just any force that was rising, it was her force. Her will. Her power. And the shadow was terrified. Rowan stepped back, his gaze never leaving hers. Do it, Evelyn, he said, his voice breaking. You have to control it now. You are the alpha. Without another word, Rowan knelt before her. His bloodline, the Nightshade bloodline, was about to merge with hers, an ancient ritual that could only be completed by the one willing to sacrifice everything. As he raised his arms, the world around them began to glow, the air buzzing with energy as the power surged, swirling like a storm. And then, as Evelyn's heart shattered into 1,000 pieces, the unthinkable happened. Rowan's form dissolved into a blinding light, his body consumed by the very power he had fought to contain. Evelyn screamed, but it was too late. His sacrifice had been sealed. And with his death came the final victory. The shadow screamed, its form writhing in the air, twisting into something less, something broken. Evelyn's power surged, raw, untamed, yet controlled. She had conquered the shadow. She had become the alpha, not just in blood, but in spirit. But as the storm around her settled, as the forest returned to its natural calm, a single tear slid down Evelyn's cheek. The pack was free. The curse was broken. But the cost was everything. Rowan was gone. Evelyn stood alone, the weight of the world on her shoulders, but the ache in her chest was the only thing that felt real. Evelyn stood on the edge of the cliff, the wind whipping her hair around her face, her eyes locked on the horizon. The world below her was still, peaceful even, but she could feel the pulse of it, the heartbeat of a world on the brink of change. Her change. The pack had always been ruled by fear, by blood, by the relentless need to dominate. But Evelyn's reign would be different. She wasn't the monster they feared. She wasn't the shadow they had been born into. She was the alpha they had been waiting for, and the only way forward was to build something new, something better. Her mind raced as she turned back to face the pack, gathered in the clearing behind her. They watched her with eyes full of uncertainty, but there was something else too. Hope. The same hope she had felt in their eyes during the final battle, the same spark that had ignited when she took her place as the true alpha. But hope wasn't enough. Not yet. You all have seen what I am, Evelyn began, her voice carrying over the pack like the first breath of a new dawn. But you haven't seen what I can be. What we can all be. Her words hung in the air, and for the first time, she saw the pack listening, truly listening. They were no longer the same wolves who had been ruled by fear, by rage. They had seen what real power looked like. It wasn't about dominance. It was about understanding. It was about breaking the chains of the past. She took a step forward, her voice stronger now, more confident. I am the alpha. But I am not just the alpha of power. I am the alpha of change. And if we are to move forward, we must leave the past behind. We will no longer be ruled by violence, by bloodshed, or by the fear that has haunted our bloodline for centuries. The pack shifted, some stepping closer, others still hesitant. But the shift was undeniable. The air was different now, charged with a quiet intensity, like the calm before a storm. You are not alone, Evelyn continued, her gaze sweeping over them. We are not slaves to the shadow anymore. We are not prisoners of a curse. The past has ended. And we will write a new story, a story where the pack is united, where we are not bound by fear but by loyalty. Where we can live without being hunted, without being the monsters the world believes we are. A low murmur rippled through the pack. Some wolves stepped forward, their faces softening, their eyes bright with the possibility of what could be. Others hesitated, still bound by the past, still fearful of what this new future might cost them. Evelyn's heart hammered in her chest. She knew what they feared. She had feared it too. That the power they had fought for, the bloodshed that had marked their history, would never truly fade. But she had to believe it could. She had to lead them with compassion. I was born with the power of the alpha, she said, her voice steady. But it's not enough to be born with power. It's about what you choose to do with it. I choose to lead you with wisdom, with compassion. I choose to break the cycle that has haunted our bloodline. Her eyes met those of the pack leaders, the strongest among them. And for the first time, they looked at her not as a leader they had to follow, but as a leader they trusted. A long silence stretched between them, the weight of her words sinking in. Then slowly, one by one, the pack stepped forward, their postures shifting, the tension melting away. They were choosing. They were choosing her. They were choosing the future she had promised. And in that moment, Evelyn felt it, the power that came not from dominance, but from understanding. From compassion. This is just the beginning, Evelyn said, her voice fierce with conviction. We will be stronger together, united by trust, by loyalty, not by bloodshed. We will rebuild the pack. And we will no longer be a shadow of our former selves. She turned, walking toward the heart of the pack, her heart swelling with a sense of pride she had never known. This was the future. This was the change she had fought for. And as she looked back one last time at the horizon, she knew this was her true purpose. To lead, to heal, to break the cycle of violence that had haunted them all. The moon hung low in the sky, casting its silver light over the forest below. For the first time in centuries, the land felt at peace. The winds whispered through the trees, but they no longer carried the weight of fear or violence. They carried something else. Something brighter. Evelyn stood at the heart of the pack, her eyes scanning the wolves gathered around her. The tension that had once consumed them was gone, replaced by something far more powerful, unity. The world outside had always feared them, the monsters in the dark. But now, the pack was no longer just a group of wolves. They were a family, bound not by blood, but by the shared strength of choice. A new era had begun, one where they were free from the chains of their past. Evelyn had redefined what it meant to be alpha. She hadn't fought to dominate. She had fought to understand, to listen, to lead with compassion, not fear. And the pack had followed her, not because they had to, but because they believed in her vision. The first human village stood at the edge of the forest, once a place of quiet tension, now a place of hope. The pack had reached out, not with fangs, but with open hands. A truce had been formed, a fragile but real peace between humans and werewolves. It had started small, a shared harvest, a conversation by the riverbank, but it was growing slowly, steadily. Evelyn watched as the humans and wolves worked side by side, their once separate worlds colliding into something new. She had always believed that coexistence was possible. She had fought for it with every fiber of her being. But seeing it, witnessing the smiles exchanged between them, was something she had never dared to dream. "Look at them," Rowan said softly, standing beside her. His eyes were bright, filled with something that resembled pride. "You did it, Evelyn. You brought them together." Evelyn didn't answer right away. She simply watched the scene unfold before her. The wolves, once fierce and untrusting, now greeted the humans with respect. The humans, once terrified of the creatures lurking in the woods, now extended their hands in friendship. But there was more. The wolves weren't just coexisting with the humans. They were thriving. The pack was stronger now, not just in numbers, but in heart. The shadow of the curse that had once loomed over them had been lifted. There was no longer a need for violence. No longer a need for fear. For the first time, Evelyn felt the weight of the alpha power shift. She no longer had to fight to prove herself. Her leadership was not defined by dominance or control. It was defined by the trust of those who followed her. And the pack had trusted her. "We're not just wolves anymore," she said, her voice low but filled with purpose. "We're a bridge. A link between two worlds." Rowan nodded, a small knowing smile on his face. "You've changed everything." Evelyn's gaze turned back to the pack, watching as they mingled with the humans. She saw the way they laughed, the way they shared stories. She saw the fear in their eyes beginning to fade, replaced by something better. But as the winds shifted, Evelyn knew this peace wouldn't come easily. There would always be those who feared them, who feared the power the pack held. There would always be obstacles. But Evelyn was no longer afraid. She had found her place. Not just as an alpha, but as a leader who had the courage to show the world that change was possible. To prove that unity was stronger than the fear that had plagued their kind for centuries. The future was uncertain, but for the first time, Evelyn wasn't afraid to face it. The pack had chosen a new path, and with each passing day, they would continue to build a world where they didn't have to hide in the shadows anymore. This was just the beginning. Evelyn stood on the balcony, the night stretching endlessly before her, stars scattered across the sky like distant whispers. The cool breeze lifted her hair, but even the wind felt heavier now, laden with the weight of all she had lost. The world had changed. She had changed. But in the stillness of the night, the truth was undeniable: power always comes with a cost. The pack was thriving, the village flourishing, but no one saw the burden she carried. The weight of leadership. The weight of being both human and alpha. The price of the power she had fought so hard to control. She wasn't just the alpha anymore. She was the alpha with the shadow inside her, and no matter how much she tried to push it away, the darkness lingered, feeding off her every doubt, every fear, every decision she made. It wasn't gone. It was a part of her now. Forever. The transformation had been brutal. Her body had cracked and shifted, the power surging through her with a force that almost destroyed her. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was what had stayed behind. The lingering presence of the shadow. Its whispers, its hunger. It was no longer an external force, something she could fight. It was inside her, a shadow on her soul. Her fingers tightened around the railing, the cold metal biting into her skin, grounding her. She had fought the shadow. She had won. But the victory had come with a price. Rowan was gone. Her father's legacy was a shattered dream. And now, she was left with a power she wasn't sure she could control. "I thought it would get easier," she whispered to the night, as if the wind could carry her thoughts away. But the weight of it, it never stops. A faint rustle of footsteps behind her made Evelyn turn. Rowan's voice, echoing in her mind, was still so clear. "You're stronger than this, Evelyn. You were born for this." She closed her eyes, the memory of him as sharp as the moment she had lost him. He had given everything to help her control the shadow, to make her the alpha she was meant to be. And in doing so, he had left her with all that remained, the power, the responsibility, and the legacy. But that wasn't all. The burden was hers now. She was the one who had to live with it. The one who had to carry the darkness and the light. As the moon rose higher, Evelyn's thoughts turned inward. The pack had accepted her, had chosen her as their leader. But the people around her couldn't see the truth, the part of her that would always be part shadow. The power inside her was not just about strength. It was about the cost of that strength. The sacrifices she had made to earn it. She had promised herself she wouldn't let the shadow consume her. But in the quiet moments, when the world was still, she could feel its cold fingers tracing her thoughts. What if the power she had used to save the pack, the power she had embraced, was the same power that would destroy her? The weight of it all pressed down on her, and Evelyn knew, the fight was never really over. The shadow was gone, but its legacy lived on in her, a constant reminder of the cost of power. And now, she had to find a way to live with it. To lead the pack, to protect them, and still remain human enough to remember who she was. But who was she now? Evelyn stood at the edge of the cliff, her eyes fixed on the horizon, the wind lifting her hair like a quiet promise. The world below her was changing her world. The pack, the village, the humans, they were all part of the new reality she was creating. A reality where the line between human and werewolf was no longer defined by bloodshed, by fear, but by something deeper. Something stronger. For the first time, the weight of the past seemed lighter. The shadow, its whispers, its hunger was gone. But its lessons remained. And those lessons would shape the future. They would guide her as she built a world that had never existed before, a world where werewolves could live alongside humans, not as monsters, but as equals. Behind her, the pack stood silently, watching her. The air was still, expectant, as though the very earth was holding its breath. They had followed her through the darkest days of their history, and now they were waiting for her to lead them into the light. The power she had once feared, the power that had almost consumed her, was now a part of her strength. The alpha was not a symbol of dominance anymore. It was a symbol of understanding. A symbol of trust. And in that moment, Evelyn knew that this was her true legacy. Not the bloodshed. Not the fear. But the peace she had fought for. "You're ready," Rowan's voice echoed in her mind, like a soft whisper carried by the wind. She could almost feel him beside her, his presence still lingering in her heart. He had believed in her. He had given his life so she could become this alpha. And now, she would make his sacrifice count. Evelyn turned back to the pack, her gaze sweeping over each wolf, each face filled with something she had never seen before: hope. They had chosen her. They had chosen this future. No longer bound by the curse. No longer enslaved by the fear of the shadow. They were free. They were together. "I know you're scared," Evelyn said, her voice steady, yet full of the love and strength that had grown within her. "But we are stronger than we've ever been. Together, we will rebuild. Together, we will make this world ours." The pack moved closer, some hesitant, others eager. But there was no fear now. No hesitation. There was only trust. And that was all they needed. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting the world in shades of gold and purple. Evelyn took a deep breath, feeling the promise of a new day. The shadow was gone. But she knew the true battle wasn't over. The world would still fear them. Still misunderstand them. But it didn't matter anymore. Evelyn was no longer fighting for survival. She was fighting for understanding, for unity. And as the first star appeared in the sky, Evelyn smiled. This was just the beginning. The future was hers to shape, and she would not let the past define her or her pack any longer. The end of the battle. The beginning of the peace.